What have I understood? What do I understand? What am I understanding? How will I actualize? How will I realize? How will I be without seeing? Okay. So we continue here with the fourth week, the holy words, which will be the concepts that we'll be understanding, right? Sugmad, either the spiritual hierarchy of ruler of plane is the same God, or it makes no sense to say Sugmad. It is simply the highest God of all. Why else would that only be listed as ruler of plane 11 and 12, while Akshar is listed for plane 13 and above? And by plane, I guess I mean heaven, 13 and above. 14th plane, 13th heaven. After dawn on Sunday, the 25th of May, 2014, I saw throbbing, textured yellow. Mahanta. I'm skipping this one, as repeating this word seems to be worship of whatever is called it. Now, I do say, like for example, if you were to say Eher Hehu Pamluk Gnuik and have an intention to pray for me, not to me, that'd be a different story. But that is not the intention when people call on their so-called Mahanta. I am sure that actually knowing Christ, our Messiah, means still leaves some of us unable to repeat it, like the Christians would, or such titles would be repeated in other churches and shrines. Eckankar may say, we give him respect, but not worship. The non-monotheistic our Christian way, that they call him the Word of God. The Ek made incarnate in the living Ekmaster, the living Word, the inner master, the outer master, the dream master, and just plain master should be clear enough to prove Ekmasters are worshipped in Eckankar. That is why its leaders wanted the organization called a church, with all that training that would have made clear to them that a church is a kirk or hero shrine where people worship other than God, like a gods or God. Now, you can say a place, you're saying something and saying something and saying something, and this name, whether it's a mystical name or some other name, and thinking your intentions related to that. But it's a different thing when you're invoking or evoking a being and calling its name. Now, if somebody's present and you're provoking a reaction, that sort of evocation, because you evoke yourself, you evoke the other people witnessing. That's not the same thing as somebody who's not physically present to say, well, oh, he's, as God's representative, he is omnipresent and omniscient and omnipotent in all the realms and beyond. Again, obviously, they're worshiping the guy. Why not just be honest? Truth. It makes sense to dedicate practices to God if they are worthwhile. I agree about asking God. I agree about asking God for truth and the implication to be ready for whatever that may be, given the attribution of day 4 of week 4, the Hakikat lock, our ultimate reality sphere, our 8th plane, is the place to attribute this to. After dawn on Monday the 26th, I saw a throbbing, whirling purple. Wisdom. Some systems would attribute scientia, our knowledge, from external senses, our information, as proceeding sapientia, or wisdom from external sources. This is the way that Eckankar teaches that a soul generally gangs before the ninth plane, called Agamlak, our unapproachable plane. This makes sense as a soul's descent from the highest on down. Eckankar teaches that the soul is created higher than the 10th plane, but the implied meaning is that knowledge is a lower state and people just don't attain to it before this. After dawn on Tuesday the 27th, I saw yellow sparks in a white cloud. Scientia sapientia. Okay. Travel. The implication here is to soul travel, which is really like lucid dreaming for the active and aware role played in it. Would you say it is different from dream travel, astral travel, interplane projection, and other forms of psychedelic manipulation? Do people really go to heaven, or where we will be in the afterlife this way? After dawn on Wednesday the 28th, I saw a neon green cloud fill up my view. Freedom. God realization is said to result in freedom. This is probably because when we realize the reality of what God is, our spiritual truths, we are able to acquire attributes that attune us to that reality instead of whatever delusions we had. Our wisdom, freedom, and power attributes we are meant to have. It does make sense to say that God is the most free. Before dawn on Friday the 30th, I saw hot pink waves. Satsang. The communal satsang classes for learning and understanding texts of the spiritual path seem the most actual of satsang. These are generally around one of the 17 years of Discourses or other member-only books. Sometimes they are on books available to the general public. The Eckankar definition extends to any instruction interpreted as being between its leader and an individual. Experiences attributed to being from a class in one of the over 16 alleged golden wisdom temples are also said to be satsang. I'll stick to interpreting my inner dialogue as being primarily psychological. Obviously, Chanhassen is the physical thing, and Darwin Gross actually did have hope for a physical one and actually took part in the finding of Chanhassen, but it took years to realize that there's a picture of him and Darwin Gross and Harold Klemp in the process of they wanted a temple, but after dawn on Friday the 30th, I saw turquoise ripples in water. Say love as love are in 4 syllables for the remaining days of the month. Love, 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 love. Okay. After dawn on Saturday, the the 31st of May till dawn on the 3rd of June 2014 would be that period for me. I can't help but think of the way love is said in the song This Love by Pantera. You got this love, love. You know, no, that I didn't sing that right, but you get the idea. Eckankar teaches God itself is love. Revealed religion teaches love may be for evil, out of balance, or out of ignorance. I would agree with the prophets in saying God is most loving. Is love the final passkey into the kingdom of God? It may be essential, but our other emotions should be directed towards submission to God too. I believe it is better to set out love as a verb and attain more to love as a noun. Whether or not you agree that love is the feeling and being behind Eck or Eckankar works, it is an important trait to a spiritual or religious life. After dawn on Sunday, June 1st, 2014, I saw hot pink waves distinct from lavender-colored waves. Workbook activity. Workbook activity 1 is on page 87 and asks why 29 different spiritual exercises. To me, variation is not so much about the possibilities as not being too rigid about doing the same exact thing all the time. For example, we have, so people will pray 5 times a day, reciting for this, right? And you can go a long time reciting without saying the exact same evening, dusk, dawn, early afternoon, late afternoon prayer. Reciting passages like this, and there's supplications, stuff to do in silent parts. There's a lot of variety, but again, repeating stuff, it doesn't have to get old. It just depends on what you're repeating, right? With there's a difference between vain repetitions and repetitions themselves. With spiritual are merely fun things, it can be well worthwhile. Even the usual practices that I seldom, if ever, mention in these papers on Eckankar have variation or are worked in sort of a rotation. I want to remember my dreams. Not because I'm told it is important, but because it seems like it would be beneficial in a psycho-spiritual way. Because it seems like it would be beneficial psycho-spiritually. I identify with the mention in the discourse about no drugs and being open as a dreamer. If nothing else, Eckankar meetings are a place to share some dreams and visions. Workbook Activity 2 is on page 88. They stop mentioning living your usual sleep or other practices as the discourses progress. In the Eck Dream 1 discourses, the implication is that the reader would have abandoned their other spiritual practices and replaced them with prayers to the Eck Masters. Some resist this saint worship for years in the organization, but I don't know if the second initiation will force me to quit, to not shirk my spirituality, in order to not shirk my spirituality. Being an active listener or detail learner can help people remember dreams, but I don't know if I changed in this when I started years ago. Workbook Activity 3 on page 89 asks what happened when one set aside a dream night. I've always tried to be ready to record or remember whatever comes. Of the 12 pieces of dream advice in this discourse, the last preparation for dreams is the one I won't do. It is one thing to visualize, but picturing some person who wants to be my master and treating him as my intercessor with my soul is a displeasing thought to me. I would recommend the night that starts on Thursday as a dream night. Jews may want to pick the following night, or the Sabbath. Christians and Vaishnavis may prefer to use Sunday. Workbook Activity 4 makes clear on page 90 of the Eckankar 1 Discourses by Harold Klemp that even higher initiates in Eckankar have still to learn correct judgment. Now, a thing there is the going back a little bit in what I had to say. The Sabbath for Enochian magic is Mondays, and that's not why I fasted. I was fasting before I heard of that, but I could understand that people will make mistakes. But how can being a fifth initiate or beyond mean lacking in just discrimination? This only makes sense if initiations are not chosen based on spiritual or mental knowledge of the initiator or the authority dictating the initiation. What I bring into this work keeps me open, and I credit God and try to find comfort from the symbols and messages of truth that exist, whether or not it exists in Eckankar. Workbook Activity 5 on page 90 and 91 goes over the list of Eckmasters Wazi, Rebazar Tars, Fabi Quantz, Yalbo Sakabi, Petter Zask, Rami Nuri, and Light C. I might be comfortable repeating someone's name if they were present, but not to worship them like a deity. It says do these exercises as it feels comfortable. I can shut my eyes and see a picture, but the context of these exercises makes me uncomfortable with all of them. Does remembering a dream or something from the process of going to sleep or waking up mean an act of worship is right for you? Workbook Activity 6 on page 92 and 93 is a set I feel comfortable with. It only asks me to mention 7 imaginary temples. Some are based on historical temples. Inner plane projection of Bakiti, Katsupari, Garahira, Askleposis, Sekapori, Namayatan, Param Akshar are temples of golden wisdom I am willing to explore, even in this context. With all 4 sets, they ask to check off dream recall and make notes, even if they are thoughts after waking up. Workbook Activity 7 takes the practice to include the day too. I think of these planes of God in terms of astral projection. Sat Kanwal Anda, Brahmandalok, Brahamlok, Sagunalok, Satnam, Alaklok, and Anamilok are really ideas to project out upon. The projections here include pink and the roar of the sea, orange and the tinkling of bells, blue and running water, violet and buzzing bees, rich yellow and the single note of a flute, soft yellow and a heavy wind, and sheer white, and huge. Workbook Activity 8 on page 97 and 98 calls to see if chanting certain words have a noticed effect. Sugmad, Mahanta, truth, wisdom, travel, freedom, satsang, and up to 3 nights of love. I think I'll abstain from the second, but will tell you that we should all be one who shows the way to someone in something. So that is why in the meme I have, nickname for myself and other spiritual name for myself, I think, and becoming a living way shower, because that's really an Eckankar. Yes, they make their way through an organization, but the goal that they put on you is becoming a way shower. And missionary work to get people into the Eckankar organization is kind of what they push you along for, particularly after you've got a second initiation. And really after you got the fifth, right? But, so let's, Baraka Bashad. May the blessings be. And go Eck yourself.